Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Alder. It's like coffee with an analyst, but there's no actual coffee. Each episode, we interviewed an expert in the field of law enforcement analysis to share their career-defining stories and to get their insights on the world. Please join us on recognizing and learning from these brilliant minds as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
Thank you for joining me. I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder, and today our guest has 10 years of law enforcement analysis experience. He was a sworn officer with the Houston Independent School District in Texas. He is currently the Criminal Intelligence Analyst with the City of Sugar Land in Texas. Here live in Las Vegas at the IACA Conference. Please welcome Michael Jackson. Michael, how are we doing?
We're doing great. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the privilege and honor of being here. I'm truly shocked and really excited about the opportunity.
All right. Well, first and foremost, we have to talk about the name. Michael Jackson, you have to get it all the time. So what is your normal reaction when people your name and you give the answer Michael Jackson?
Yeah, so generally the first reaction or the first question is, are you the real Michael Jackson? To which I always say, well, yes, I am. I am the real Michael Jackson. But yeah, people always want to know, did your mom name you after Michael Jackson? Was she a big fan? And the answer is actually kind of boring. My mom always said she had a son. She was going to name him Michael. She always, liked the name Michael, and she just so happened to marry a Jackson, so that's how that worked out. So no relation, no ties to the king of pop, but nah, it was just coincidence.
All right. So how did you discover the law enforcement analysis profession?
So I started out in law enforcement in 2005. I started out as an officer with the Houston IACA Police Department. Growing up, I always kind of knew I wanted to be a cop. I used to play Chips. I remember the old TV show from the 80s,
yes.
With my best friend, and, so I always knew I had, family that was law enforcement. So I always kind of knew that I was going in that direction. So when I became a police officer with HISD, I had the opportunity to do some things, and a little bit of investigations, some things with SWAT, some field training. But it was always the detective side I was always more interested in, because, right, that's where the movies are. When you're watching the movies, all the investigators are in and they're solving cases by using, putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So I was always interested in that, but I didn't know that crime analysis was a thing. When I was a police officer, I just thought that the detectives just solved all the cases because they were really smart and they, knew how to do these things. So, once I left HISD, I applied with the Houston PD, as a crime analyst. That was kind of the beginning, of my, introduction into crime analysis and really understanding how important it is in what we do in law enforcement profession.
So how long were you with the ISD?
I was there for 7 years, and then I went over to HPD. I enjoyed being a cop. I love being a cop. But like I said in my last presentation, that the thing that drew me away from it was the paycheck. Like the paycheck at the ISD just wasn't cutting it, and I had an opportunity to still be in law enforcement and kind of do something new with a different department, a bigger agency. So I took a shot, and it kind of worked out and kind of birthed this whole crime analysis thing. I always say that I never feel like a crime analyst. I've got, some close friends that are crime analysts, and they, know how to whip up maps and charts and graphs, and they know SQL and all these great things. And, I feel like I'm always kind of still to this day just learning how to do these things that they've probably been doing, I feel like, since they came out of the womb. It seems so natural to them, but when I discover a new way to do something or I learn something new, I'm like, oh man, this is so great. So I don't know if I'm a crime analyst, but I feel like I'm a really, really good detective. Like if there was a really great detective out there that works for a department, I feel like I'm that guy. Like I'm resourceful. I know how to do a lot of different things, know tactically like where to look for things and how to sort things and how to make things easier to find, how to present things. So I just feel like I do a lot of little things well. And I'm still trying to get myself to a point where I'm a, pretty solid analyst, but we'll see. I like the fact that it's an ongoing journey. I like the fact that, I feel like I haven't reached my potential as far as being a great analyst and being able to just reaching my potential, really. I just feel like I haven't met that ceiling quite yet. And so I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to get better every day.
So how was the transition from the ISD to Houston? Because Houston's very big city, even not only in population, but in terms of square miles.
Right.
Houston is really large. So how was that transition for you?
So going from an ISD police department to Houston Police Department really wasn't that bad as far as the kind of ins and outs of policing. Because all of our schools were in Houston, we used HPD's port writing system at the time. I think they've moved on to something else. We used their DA prosecutors. So we had the same operating procedures as HPD, but we just operated independently. So, as an ISD, we had our own chief and so on and so forth. So, people used to call us the fake police all the time, but I took offense to that. And, when it came time to, getting some arrests in, I'm like, oh, well, not fake now, am I? When they put these cuffs on you. But so the transition wasn't so bad going from the ISD to Houston. Where the transition got weird was going from a police officer to a civilian analyst.
Okay.
That's where it got really weird. So when I was out in the field, I was able to drive around and, get involved in things and chase people. And once I became a civilian analyst, I was at the real-time crime centers where I started. I go from riding around in the car, having all this freedom, chasing bad guys to, doing it behind the desk, in a cubicle on a computer. So that was the big transition for me. And I was kind of like, I'm not sure if this is going to work out because, I like doing movie stuff and running after people and, slapping cuffs on people. That was the biggest transition.
So why did you make that transition from sworn to civilian?
So at the time I was at HISD. Again, I loved being a police officer, but I had gotten married, had a kid, got a house, and just the salary just wasn't matching up to the needs. So I saw an opportunity with HPD and for a crime analyst, and I went in and applied with the full-on intention of, getting my feet wet, learning something, and then I'm gonna become a detective, and because that's my goal, right? That's what I wanted to be when I was a kid. I'm going to be the detective that solves all the crimes and the really smart detective that, my goal, honestly, I can tell you, was to retire as a sergeant in the detective bureau. Like I didn't never want to be lieutenant. I didn't, captain, none of that. I just want to be a sergeant in a detective bureau that had been there for years and just kind of knows everything about everything and was able to bring up young detectives and, got his old detective. Like I wanted to be that guy. And once I started got into crime analytics and just saw how important it was and how much the detectives actually need crime analysts and still being a part of, solving crimes. And, it got really exciting. And every time I thought that, I was tapped out on things to do or the experiences, something else would come up, right? So I learned something new. So it's like, it's almost every week or month or something, this new exciting thing is happening. So crime analytics has kept me very excited for a very long time, even with the new transition to Sugar Land where I am at now. It's been exciting the whole time.
All right. So when you think back to your first days as a crime analyst there in Houston, what was maybe the biggest lesson learned, or what do you think about when you think about that time when you started?
I think thinking back, especially that first couple of months, honestly, I was thinking, how am I going to get out of this, right? I don't know anything about computers. I don't know what a spreadsheet is. What the heck is Access, Microsoft? I hadn't, so I was thinking, how am I going to get out of this? But then again, I'd have those moments when they'd say, hey, there's this database called TLO or Clear or Leads Online. shameless plug, I guess, vigilant, or, there were these that where you can put in this information and that guy or that vehicle or that house you're looking for, now suddenly you can have all the information you know about it. And if you take this little piece of information here with what you found over here, and then you tie it into what was in that report, all that stuff's going to fit together and be in a nice little puzzle. So that was kind of the rush, like the rush to, cause when I was a kid, I used to do a lot of puzzles. I did Michael Jackson puzzles all the time, believe it or not. I did quite a few of those. I like putting puzzles together, and it's satisfying. Like it's, some people mow the grass or they clean. Once they clean, they feel sad. For me, it was kind of like putting those little pieces of the puzzle together that, after it's done, you're like, oh man, that's really refreshing. Like, I'm glad that happened. So yeah, kind of looking back, I was wanting to get out of there, but then again, I would have those moments where I'm like, yeah, okay, well, that works. And that was kind of cool. Maybe I'll stick around for a little while and, and see where this goes. And yeah, it's still going after all this time. So.
All right. So this brings us to your analyst badge story. For those that may be new to the show, the analyst badge story is the career-defining moment, case, or project for an analyst. And for you, it's during your time here with the Real-Time Crime Center helping solve a serial rape case.
Yeah, so there was a guy going around, I think it was about, what I remember, it was about a year and a half. He was driving around and he was targeting prostitutes. Obviously the prostitutes are easy targets. They're not going to call the cops, so on and so forth. But he was raping them. And so one of the investigators from sex crimes called down. By then, I'd kind of had a name for myself over at Houston. I'd given a couple of presentations here at IACA, so my name had kind of been getting around. So things were going pretty good. So when she called specifically asking for me, I was pretty excited about that. So anyway, she called and she said, "Hey, I'm working on this guy. All I've got are pieces of information." Yes, pieces, puzzles, awesome. So we started collecting those pieces of information that she got from complainant statements, vehicle information, and what happened was one of his last victims was able to get pretty good description of the car and a temp tag. I was able to use some databases and started to narrow down a common place where this vehicle was showing up. Once we got the address kind of nailed down, then we started looking at like known persons at that address, drivers listed at this location, and then we were able to come up with a lineup of possible suspects, and it turned out that that guy was one of them. So that one felt good just because we got a really bad guy off the street. Obviously, it always feels good to get a bad guy off the street, but that one was pretty special to me. Obviously, we didn't get a lot of credit. I think in the post-interview, they did talk about the Real-Time Crime Center, but, as analysts, we hardly ever get the credit anyway. But, we don't do it for the credit or the glory. Obviously not the money as well, but that was a big one for me. There was another incident that I had where a SWAT team, I'd kind of heard, hey, call Michael Jackson, he kind of just done some good things. They were going to go take down this house, and the SWAT commander called and said, hey, we need to know who's in the house, so on and so forth. So I pulled the guy's name up, pulled up the occupants in the house. I don't know what made me do it, but maybe it's Diligence, but I was searching through the guy's social media accounts. So I find on his social media account for the past 2 days, he had been posting like, I'm not getting taken out by the cops, F the cops, and if the cops roll up, I got this for him. He had pictures of guns and what he was going to do to the cops. And so I'm looking at this, I'm like, hey, Captain, I said, these are all the identified people in the house. You have a child, so on and so forth. But also, he's been kind of revved up the past couple of days and saying what he's going to do to cops, if they try to take him out. So, you may want to, just let your people know.
Extra
just in
precaution.
Just in case this becomes a thing. And he said, oh, I appreciate that. So a couple of days later, after they took the guy down, they said, yeah, well, I'm glad you said something. We did find guns in the house, and he was a little agitated, but it wasn't so bad. But because we were, informed, we kind of went in with the mindset that this will be a problem.
Yeah.
They extra prepared for it. So that was another feel good thing because, again, officer safety patrol, being in that real-time crime center atmosphere, it was a good feeling. Let those officers know, not walk into something kind of blind, let them know. So.
Yeah, I always find it fascinating with real-time crime centers and analysts. You just have to use your own judgment on what you're going to search. You might have a checklist there of all the databases that you can search, but when you start running a person, a place, or a vehicle, you're going to start gathering more information, and that's going to give you more keywords to search in all these other databases. And you can just keep on researching forever that way. So you have to make your best judgment as to what's going to be the most efficient way to do your job.
Yeah, that was one of the kind of cool challenges of working in a real-time crime center, especially when I first got there, because that was the majority of the things I did. As my name kind of got around later on, I started working more investigations from other divisions, more specific. But the real-time crime part of it, we were actually supplementing the calls for service as they were going on. So as we were getting information, say we got a plate, I would send out anything relevant as far as identifying the personnel or person. But after that, it all kind of depends on the response time of the officers. So let's say I got a plate and I'm able to say, okay, this plate's been involved in a robbery, this date, and here's the case number. As I'm monitoring that calls for service, that live call slip, I'm also continuing on research with the information that I found. So if I see units haven't arrived yet, then as I'm searching that call slip, I can say, all right, the person associated to that robbery is this name, height, weight, so on and so forth. So it was very dependent on the response time of the officers and what I was going to put in there. But the most pertinent identifying pieces of information were always first, and then anything after that. And then eventually they got used to getting updates, so they would call sometimes when they were out on the scene. They did need more information, or if the incident turned into something bigger, obviously we had time then to. But it was pretty fun, and especially me being an ex-officer and used to going and running those calls. I always thought, man, it'd be nice if I had more information. What I was walking into.
So, do you have any advice for analysts that either are currently working in real-time crime centers or maybe looking to get into a real-time crime center?
The first thing I'll say is you can do it. It's going to seem overwhelming. It's going to seem very fast-paced, depending on, the type of calls for service you have. But it can be done. When dealing with real-time crime and live calls for service, the biggest thing I would say is get the most pertinent information out first. Whatever is going to help that officer or provide him safety. That's the information that you get out first. Anything after that is supplemental. So identify your person of interest or who that officer is going out to or that address location, and let those officers know what they're walking into. Lord knows we don't need any more, officer involved. So if those things can be avoided, that's the information that we want to get out to them first.
So let's move on now to you transitioning from big old Houston to now back to a smaller agency in the city of Sugar Land.
Yeah, so after I left the real-time crime center, I was still in Houston, I went to the TAG unit, Texas Anti-Gang Unit, and started working even bigger cases, more organized crime cases, this and that. So, but I felt like I was kind of stalling out there, like the department was too big in a sense, and as my growth in crime analytics was happening, I felt like I was being a little stunted as far as products I was trying to put out. I felt like I was still getting more of the, hey, what's this, phone number, who's this associated to, and some of the long-term investigations that were happening were so long-term that we were kind of left out of them, or like it wasn't as fulfilling. I wasn't getting that fulfillment, and I kind of felt like my skills were being underutilized. Still useful, but just kind of not growing. Meanwhile, we have to remember too, gone to conferences now. I've presented on some conferences. I've got friends and, from the East Coast to the West Coast, and, I'm learning all these new things and, trying to bring that back to, where I was at. Didn't feel like it was happening. So once I moved over to Sugar Land, a smaller department, it gave me an opportunity to recharge and reinvent myself. It actually forced me to reinvent myself, because now we're going from, 661, if I remember from my last presentation, square miles in Houston, down to 41, 42. So
just a little bit different.
Yeah, it was just a little bit smaller, right? And, in Houston, everything was kind of like bang, bang, and here in Sugar Land, crimes are a little slower, but they're a little more personal, right? Because we kind of know about all the problems, like property crimes. We know these areas because they're so small. Everyone frequents them, so it's not so huge. If I say, the Walmart got hit with a B&B or a robbery, everyone knows what Walmart we're talking about in Sugar Land. But in Houston, you say a Walmart got hit, and you're like, what side? Left side? East side, north side? Which one? So it felt a little more personal, and for me, a lot of growth has taken place in this last year too, because the one thing that I found out in the first couple of months I was there, where I kind of felt like I was not doing well. I don't want to say failing, but I felt like I wasn't having the same amount of success in Sugar Land that I was having in Houston. And that kind of charged me up a bit, and I had to try to figure out why. And what I came up with was the things that I was doing in Houston aren't working in Sugar Land because they're two different departments. There's two different cultures. It's two different cities. So I had to change my approach. So now I've gone from in Houston, where I was a little bit more tactical, a little more bing, bang, boom, to Sugar Land, where I have to sit back and start noticing things such as patterns, trends, location history, special events, right? I had to start monitoring those things. I have to start knowing who we are arresting, right? Because the majority of our criminals are coming from outside our city. Sugar Land's a wealthy area, so, most of our crooks are children who are, shoplifting. So when we have robberies and juggings and, homicides, or the few one or two that we have, we're not necessarily looking in our city at first, right? Because, again, statistics show the majority of our crooks are coming from outside of the city. So having to look at things differently as an analyst, and my approach changed a lot, which I think has helped me to, again, with that growth, become a little bit better as far as what I'm lacking in skills and where I need to go.
So do you feel that the data at Sugar Land lends itself to easily identifying the patterns and trends?
Well, that was one of the things that kind of a self-discovery thing. They've had analysts there before, and they've all had a kind of different approach to crime analytics and the incidents they had. I felt compelled to find a different path to what they've been doing. I could have easily kind of just sat down and said, all right, well, these incidents happened last week. You had 5 B&Bs here. You had, an aggravated assault here, and here you go. But I kind of felt compelled to try to do more, especially when we started getting hit with catalytic converter thefts. So I really started digging more into data-driven analytics, which eventually led us to things like the paper plate initiative. I used data to associate the amount of thefts we had associated them to suspect vehicles. I was able to show that we were on a rise over the past 5 years, and we had reached actually a peak this year. So I was able to get the command staff to buy in on that. I also spun that into license plate reader analysis, where we were getting hits. We get hits on stolen vehicles or suspect vehicles in this or that case or that case. So I started breaking down using Microsoft Excel, which, again, no experience in the past before. So I'm learning and Googling how to, but I was able to break down, like, all right, here are the common times, these are the common places, this is a common location. And I sent that out to our patrol. And I'm like, all right, if you want to catch a stolen vehicle, you may want to be in this area in this time. And so the response and the feedback that I got from the officers and from the command staff, them making arrests really got me excited. So now I kind of feel like in my journey of becoming a crime analyst, right? Because I'm still kind of, I feel like I'm still growing here. Those things get me really excited. And when I get positive feedback from it, it only kind of encourages me to find other ways. My goal at Sugar Land PD is to make the patrol division a data-driven entity, if that's the right word. So I want our patrol to patrol certain areas, certain locations at certain times, not because they feel like it or they don't have anything to do, but because data has shown that because of in the past or events that we've had or things that are happening, this is the appropriate place to be. And I think that helps the department overall, utilize its resources in the best way, which again, everyone wins when things are going well and everyone's kind of buying in. And I think everyone wins when we're doing that. So that's my goal now. So far, since I've started doing this year, I feel like it's been working. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. So I'm going to continue to see what happens.
Hi, this is Mary Bertuccell. Would you like to solve a cold case? If your answer is yes, then enter a cold case from your agency into VICAP, the FBI's Violent Criminal Apprehension Program. Thanks.
Hi, this is Sally Rawlings, and I'm curious if other people have the same experience. You get on an airplane to travel somewhere, and the person sitting next to you says, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And you say crime analysis, and they go, "Oh, I love CSI. I watch all the shows. I almost did it, but then I didn't." So then you debate, do I correct him or do I just roll with it? I've gotten to the point now I go, yeah, CSI is awesome.
When we talked in prepping for this recording, you had mentioned also getting into the idea of prevention.
Yeah, so one of the big things that kind of led this data-driven analysis idea I had was the catalytic converter thefts we were getting slammed. I didn't know what catalytic converters were, right? Mm-hmm. I thought they were Cadillac converters, and I thought, they were only in Cadillacs. So when I saw a Cadillac converter being stolen from a Honda, I was like, how is that possible? Like, how do you steal a Cadillac converter from a Honda, right? And so,
but this in the trunk.
Yeah. So, but this is coming from a guy I still take my car in for them to change my turn signal fluid every 6 months. So I'm that guy, right? So I don't know anything about cars, but the one thing I did know is we were having these catalytic converters that are being stolen. So I took a step back and, dropped the ego, because a lot of people I know everything, and I'll be the first to tell you, I don't know anything, right? Mm-hmm. And so I learned about catalytic converters. I learned what they do. I learned why they're stolen, how they're stolen, why they're valuable. And during that process, I was able to learn using leads online, the type of vehicles that are being brought in by the suspects. So I was able to come up with kind of a profile of what our patrol officers should be looking for. And it was older model vehicles. Tip tags were pretty common. I also created a spreadsheet specifically for catalytic converters. Again, this is me, learning something new. So now I'm manipulating spreadsheets, but these are things that, I've just kind of picked up over the years. So I created a spreadsheet specifically for these crimes. So now I can filter in when, where, and, kind of what to look for. So now I'm able to start following these trends. And the ultimate goal was to be able to say to the patrol officers, because it's a witnessless crime, most of the thefts we've had, nobody saw anything, nobody heard anything, it just kind of happened. But with me doing that research and now telling patrol officers, okay, look, these are the areas that are getting hit. These are around about the times that are getting hit. These are the vehicles you probably should be looking for, because when they're being sold, what's being documented are these types of vehicles. This is what you need to be focusing on. Once they got that information, We did have a lot more success as I'm reading the reports coming in on arrest with, on the stops on those vehicles. They're finding catalytic converters in the car. There was one incident when they had a Lamborghini muffler in the car, reciprocating saws. So I think just kind of arming those officers with the intelligence and what to look for really helped us on prevention. And it also led into other things. As of now, our B&B rates are down about 40%, 39%. Obviously, I can't take all the credit for it, there are a lot of things that happen that could be, another cause for it. But it seems like since these things have kind of gone on and since we've kind of armed the officers and with the whole buy-in from the department and the patrol division, it just kind of seems like things are going pretty well. Now, obviously, we still have cat converter thefts that occur and B&Bs that occur and so on, other property crimes and thefts. However, I'm also reading a lot more arrests on these type of vehicles and narcotic arrests and stolen gun arrests, so on and so forth. So I'm going with the assumption, I want to believe that it's making a difference, and our command staff believes in it, and they feel it's making a difference too. So I'm going to continue to push for a more data-driven patrol initiative or directive. That's what we've been doing, and we meet weekly to discuss what's been going on, what's kind of trending now, and what we should be looking out for. It's given us some success, so I'm excited.
Well, I hate to tell you this. You may have more to learn, but you're an analyst. No more of this, I'm still becoming an analyst. You are an analyst.
I appreciate that. It's quite the compliment. I appreciate it.
And so definitely, as I wrote down a couple of notes as you were talking here, and truly the reason you were successful at both Houston and Sugar Land is your desire to want to know more and not to let roadblocks stop you. Yeah, one of the biggest things that I've noticed kind of with analysts and with investigators is a lack of imagination. Sometimes we get requests and I hear or see other people, that can't be done. No, there's nothing out there for it. And when people come to talk to me, I never tell them we can't or I don't know anything about that. My answer is always 9 times out of 10, let me see. Let me check into it. Because chances are there's someone that has done it, or there may be someone out there. Through the years of, coming to conferences and meeting other people, I know quite a few analysts and I have quite a few contacts, and everyone's worked different cases and different stuff. And so I'll reach out to them like, hey, you ever heard of, doing something like this, or can this be done, or is there a database for this? And in my experience, most of the time, they're like, oh, yeah, we did that, or yeah, I've seen that before. So I'm able to go back and say, hey, we can try this out. So I feel like crime analysis has endless possibilities. And I'm not saying we're at the Minority Report level yet, but I wouldn't be surprised, at some point, with the age of technology, maybe we can, it's pretty endless. So do you have either a favorite training that you've taken, or what training would you recommend to analysts?
I would recommend go to any training that you can, any training your department could send you to. Absolutely go to it. I don't specifically have a favorite class or a favorite that I've gone to. Usually when I go to training, it's just picking up bits and pieces, the things that stick, and trying them out. The biggest support that I've had and the biggest value to me is coming to training conferences and meeting people. It's networking. Mm-hmm. Networking is so huge. I've had incidents where I look like a superstar because I know someone in New York or Arizona or Montana. Just because I know that person, I was able to get a picture, an address, or, some connecting piece just because I know that person. Send out an email, and then you also learn from these people too, as far as, when you're coming to these conferences, you start running into each other a lot, and, you start talking shop, at these things, you start learning about new things. Cause like, oh man, I worked this really cool case and blah, blah, blah. I did this and this. I'm like, oh really? How'd you do that? So it's just kind of a natural networking aspect of training is really the biggest help and influence that I've had as I'm coming up.
Well, we're here in Vegas at the IACA Conference.
Yes, we are.
So what have you gotten out of this week thus far?
So this week I've learned more about Google, using Google. I was going to go back to my department and see how often we use that. Some Excel stuff, since I'm, again, still learning here. So I've learned some Excel stuff. Just seeing what's out there, seeing what's new. Mm-hmm. It's always good to know, even with the vendors, just kind of seeing, how they've progressed and what they brought new to the table, how they've advanced. I remember using a certain database, and I hated it, for the longest time. I wanted to use something else. But as time went on and I went back to it, I was like, oh man, they've really made some advancements. And, so it's good to see, how these vendors are progressing and which ones are kind of sticking around and which ones are, moving on and actually making a good name for themselves in law enforcement. So yeah, it's always a learning experience, You're also part of IACA's Mentoring Committee, and you have a success story in being a mentor. Would you talk about that? Yeah, so our current president, Mary, asked me a couple of years ago, to consider being a mentor. Of course, I told her, Mary, I'm not an analyst. I'm just this guy that, happens to do analyst stuff. You guys are, she's like, no, you're going to be fine. You know some things, some people, like just give them some guidance. I'm like, okay. And so the first couple of people I was able to help out and get them started and, kind of point them in the right direction when they had questions about something specific. Sometimes they were able to help. Sometimes I said, you got to go ask that guy. But the one that I had most recently, he was trying to get a job as a crime analyst. We were in contact quite a bit, almost once or twice a week. Nice. He was applying and he eventually got a couple of callbacks. So he was like, all right, I got a call back. What do I do now? And I said, all right, well, let's do a mock interview. Mm-hmm. So for about a week and a half, we did mock interviews. I looked up some stuff from IACA, kind of Googled some random questions because, for being honest, these police departments I feel like they're still kind of feeling out the crime analytics thing. So they don't know what questions they ask. So I'm pretty sure they're Googling too. So, we found some questions and used some resources and we spent a couple of nights just kind of going over, doing a mock interview. He was appreciative and I didn't hear from him for about a week and a half. And he called me up and he was like, hey man, I got the job. Nice. So I got on with the state actually, which was really cool. And little things like that are awesome because being a mentor and, being able to help somebody out, even if you don't feel like you know everything, being a mentor, you don't have to know everything, right? You just have to know how to guide people, right? You don't have to be Jason Elder or someone, high up on the food chain, but, just being able to know how to guide people and where to send them, and that's the kind of attitude, I take with it. And that's the approach I take. I'll help you with what I can, but because I network and because I have friends here, I know other analysts that are really great at this, I can help that mentee or direct that mentee to someone who can help them. So, even if I can't personally. So be a mentor, anybody, you can do it. And it's rewarding too. It's really rewarding. So.
Yes, I agree. Your perspective as a mentor, you never know when that's going to come in handy, right? Your perspective, even talking out problems with mentees, because I find that a lot of them feel they're on their own. They're just out there in the world trying to navigate this. And so just to hear what their goals are, what they're trying to do, where they're trying to go, and for you to nurture their journey and to get them to where they go is awesome.
Yeah, and I think too, it's kind of intimidating. As crime analysis is picking up, I feel like once people get into it, the world is so big, right? And they're like, I had a lady from Abilene say she just started, and she's like, I'm new here. I don't know where to start. Like, they want me to look at some reports, but I just don't know, like, what to do. And I said, that's understandable. I mean, it's a big world. Like, then there's so many facets of crime analysis. So let's just start with the little stuff. What are you trying to do? What specifically are you, so just being able to have the knowledge to at least start pointing them in the right direction, so they don't feel like they're in such a big forest. They can take that forest and start looking at specific trees, right? And just say, all right, this is where I'm headed. Let me get, my bearings here. I'm heading for that nice big redwood. And, once I'm there, all right, now I can start looking at that big oak tree that's, off in the distance. So now the forest doesn't look so big. It's, it's a little bit smaller, and things will start coming together, eventually.
I had a mentee too that I helped to get into an internship. Mm-hmm. He needed an internship. He's out in California, and he's taking the certificate program out there, and you have to get the certificate, you have to do so many volunteer hours. It was last year with the pandemic,
right?
Which, of course, everybody was shutting down and everything else, and we found him a internship. Oh, and it led to a full-time position.
Awesome, yeah.
So
and that just makes you feel good, right?
Oh,
yeah.
So even last year in such tough times, I was able to feel like, it's like, man, that I made a difference.
Yeah,
right?
Something went right last year.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So good. All right. Well, let's finish up now with personal interests. You're a motorcycle guy. So what do you drive?
I've got a 2012 Bonneville SC. It's a little, I wouldn't consider it like a cafe racer, but it's a little putt-putt bike that I kind of go, 5 gears. And I'm so close to work now, it's kind of my main mode of transportation. But I literally just started riding, I guess, about 1.5 years ago. And that's because I had family and friends that were a daughter that was like, you can't get a bike, so all my life. And then finally I just got to the point of like, I'm old, I want a bike, I'm doing this. And they're like, yeah, okay. So, so I just started riding. It's been fantastic. The best thing about riding is the only thing you think about when you're riding is riding. Mm-hmm. So it just takes you away from everything else. You're not thinking about work. You're not thinking about any stressors. All you're doing is riding. You're looking at your surroundings. You're kind of enjoying, things that you don't normally pay attention to, when you're driving the car. So, yeah. So I like to ride as often as I can.
You can tell that I am not a motorcycle rider because I asked you what you drive, not what you ride.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But do you go on long distance? You mentioned that you go back and forth to work, but do you ever take it out for long distances?
No, I'm hoping my next bike I'll be able to, but I'm going to get something a little bit bigger, but that's going to be a bit of a challenge with the family because literally one day before I came to this conference, I flew off my bike, had an accident. So,
oh no!
Yeah, so that's gonna be a tough sell with the family, telling them that I'm getting a bigger bike, and so that's gonna be tough. But no, I don't think I'll be a ride across the state kind of rider. Yeah. But where I live down in the Houston area, we have Galveston Beach there, and we have Austin for the barbecue, and I love barbecue. So nice little couple hour ride. Go up to the hill country. It'll probably be a little bit more what I'll do. All
right. Well, if we're in the area, what's your recommendation for barbecue? Where to go?
Man. So for Houston, there's a couple places that I go to. Gatlin's Barbecue. Just, thank me later. And there's a new place that I started hitting up called Truth Barbecue. That's over in the kind of downtown area. Obviously, there's Papa's Barbecue, which is kind of like a chain. But when you've been eating barbecue as long as I have, you're like, you kind of want to stay away from the chain. So, it's pretty solid eating over there. Yeah.
All right. Well, very good. Well, our last segment to the show is Words to the World. And this is where I give the guest the last word, and you can promote any idea that you wish. Michael, what are your words to the world?
I feel like this has already been said, but if it hasn't, I'm going to say it again. Be kind. I think kindness goes a long way. I think kindness is underused. I think it's underappreciated. I think if we all just had one moment of kindness a day, if we all just had just that one moment of kindness a day to someone else, obviously, and, a stranger, I think the world would be a bit of a better place. And also, there's no wrong way to spell canceled. You can spell it with 2 L's or 1. That's a true thing. Look it up.
All right. Well, very good. Well, I leave every guest with you, giving me just enough to talk bad about you later. But I do appreciate you being with me today, Michael. Thank you so much, and you be safe.
I appreciate the honor. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. We hope you not only enjoyed the show, but also learned something new. For more information on our guests and information relating to today's topic, please visit our website at leapodcast.com. Special thanks to The Rough and Tumble for our theme song. For more of their music, you can visit their website at theroughandtumble.com. Also thanks to Kyle McMullen for our show logo. For more of his design, please visit his website at moderntype.com. The show is hosted, recorded, and edited by Jason Elder and written by me, Mindy. You can contact us both via the LEA Podcast website. Please join us again next time as we interview another expert in this great field.